Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of How To with Ziad. My name is Mia, if you don't already know me, and I will be asking questions to financial advisor Ziad on our topic for today. Today, we are planning on talking about how to understand the president's executive orders. So I'm going to let Ziad give us a brief introduction on this topic. Just before we get started, I want to remind you that this is all general information. None of this is supposed to be a recommendation or taken as advice. So please contact your financial advisor to ask questions about your specific situation. Hello, Ziad.
Hi, Mia. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, doing well. Excited for the weekend.
Yes, another nice day in Santa Monica, nice and warm. It was super hot last night. I don't know if you went outside at all.
No, I did. I mean, I was feeling it. I did not go outside, but I was putting the fans on blast. They were up on maximum power for sure. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was doing. So why don't you give us a brief introduction on what we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, of course. So for today's episode, we wanted to keep it a bit short, but also topical. Especially with the current economic state of what's going on right now in our country, and so we wanted to talk a bit on the executive orders that were issued last week by our president. Just highlight a bit of the details and answer any questions that you guys have.
Perfect. Yes, and if you want to ask questions while we are talking, please feel free to put a question in the comment section and we will try to answer it. So, Ziad, why don't you tell us, what does an executive order do?
Yeah, so an executive order is basically a presidential power that allows them to bypass the traditional congressional procedure of passing laws or passing legislation. The idea behind this is that, the president mostly uses this power, at least historically, either for either when the government is at a standstill, and they can't really come to an agreement or pass legislation, or in states of emergency where the traditional process might be taking a little bit too long. And so that's a general power. We saw it used last week, and happy to talk through the details as we go through this. Yeah.
Well, why don't you tell us, why did the president sign this order?
So the main reason the president signed this order was because the original stimulus, or the most recent stimulus that we passed for the economy, had actually just recently expired, and we had been expecting a second stimulus package, being that we're still in the middle of this pandemic and this health crisis, and then further this economic crisis that came with it. And so unfortunately, our government, our Congress, hasn't been able to come to an agreement on what the details of that stimulus would be. So now millions of Americans are being left waiting and seeing and wondering if they're going to be able to receive money, if they're going to be able to, if they don't have that and they need to pay the bills, whether they're going to be able to. And so our president passed that executive order, which to just get the ball rolling, try and get some kind of economic stimulus out there so that they could support our economy.
Of course. So can you give us some more of the details on this order? So in the past, we've talked about unemployment and we talked a little bit about student loans.
Yeah.
Are we going to be getting unemployment checks? I mean, not us,
Yeah.
because we're working right now.
For most people, so yeah.
But, if you do qualify for unemployment, then are you going to be getting unemployment checks? And do we have to start paying our student loans again?
Yeah, so there's been four major highlights that came out of the executive orders last week. First and foremost was the extension of unemployment benefits. So there is a lookout for extended benefits. So if you guys tuned into our previous episode on unemployment, most people or everyone who was on unemployment was receiving an additional $600 a month on top of whatever employment payments they were receiving beforehand. And so now this time we are extending it further out, but instead of $600 a month, it's going to be $400. And then also a little detail to highlight within that is that of that $400, only $300 a month of that is going to be funded by the federal government. The rest of the $100 a month is actually looking to be funded by the state, or that obligation is falling on the state governments. And so there's been a lot of speculation on whether that $100 is even going to come through, because most states are in a pretty tough economic position as well, a little strapped for cash, or might not be able to fund that additional unemployment payment. So 400 total on top for unemployment, but that 100 coming from the state, we're not sure if it's going to happen. Second highlight is the fact that there is going to be a deferment of payroll taxes. And so when you're working, you get a paycheck, you do actually have to defer a little bit towards paying taxes on your payroll. And so if you're making less than $100,000 a year, then those payroll taxes or those payroll deductions are going to be deferred. So you won't be paying that right now. The idea behind that is to give a little bit more money, get a little bit more money hitting the actual bank accounts for American citizens. And then third is student loans. A lot of people who had student loans are a little worried about interest rates coming back up and them not being in a financial position to be able to continue making those monthly payments at those interest rates. And so there has been a call as well to extend the 0% interest rates for federal loans, public loans only, to December 31st. And then lastly, just a general call to action for federal agencies to help support the tenants who might be getting evicted, try and limit evictions right now or even eliminate them entirely. And so there's been just a call for support, not necessarily any action directly towards eliminating evictions, but heightened awareness of it and making sure action is being taken to help people with that.
Going back to the payroll taxes, we still are going to have to pay those payroll taxes eventually, right?
Yes, we will. And so a lot of people might think, oh, I'm not paying those taxes right now, I don't have to worry about them later. But the way that the executive order was structured is that those payroll deductions or payroll taxes are going to come due eventually. The idea is that right now we just want to kind of stay afloat, help support through this tough economic time. But then once we do start picking up and are in a better position financially, economically, we are going to be expected to pay those again. So don't think that you're necessarily scot-free with those. Keep that on the horizon if you are receiving a little bit more cash in your bank account.
Okay. Another question that I've heard a lot is, are we going to be receiving another stimulus from this order?
Yeah, so there was nothing highlighted in the executive order about a stimulus check. That kind of power has been is mostly directed to Congress. They're the ones who are able to make that decision, and so it wasn't highlighted in here. So I wouldn't expect one now. Keep an eye out though for any news from Congress to see if they pass any stimulus on their end, and there potentially could be checks coming through there.
Right. So is this actually going to happen? Because the president doesn't usually have the power to issue this kind of monetary order. Mm-hmm. So do you think that this will actually be executed, or can this?
So that's been the question at hand. The executive order does have a lot of support for people who are in a financially tough position. But like you said, this normally isn't the president's power. It falls on Congress to make this kind of decision. And so a lot of people are questioning whether we actually will be receiving unemployment checks or will be deferring student loan payments or payroll taxes and student loan interest, all that kind of stuff. There is a bit of uncertainty right now. We are staying very close, or we are keeping up to date with the headlines and keeping up with what's going on in Congress to make sure that we do know when and if that is confirmed that this will be happening. Really, I think the big thing or the big reason behind this executive order is to spur Congress into action, because it's been a couple weeks now since the previous stimulus has expired. And the last thing we want right now is to be in a position where people aren't able to pay the bills. And we're starting to see this economic downturn of sorts. We're being supported right now by the government as we wade through or get through this health crisis. And so spurring some action seems to be the main motivation behind this, so that Congress can come together and come to an agreement so that we receive some very substantial and significant stimulus.
Okay. Yes. I mean, I think everything is a little uncertain right now, so it's all a little weird. But Trump has also been talking about preventing evictions for renters recently. Does this put any sort of ban on or limit on evictions?
So the order did not put necessarily a ban on evictions. In the previous stimulus, there basically was a stipulation where landowners could not evict their tenants. This time around, that isn't the case. There hasn't been anything like that yet. But the idea is that the federal agencies are being asked and pushed to helping support people from limiting those kind of evictions. So that just kind of heightened awareness and heightened action towards that is going to help a little bit, and ideally keep those numbers down and keep people in their homes while they're still managing through these times.
All great information to keep in mind. Those are all the questions that I have for right now. If anybody who is watching wants to ask any questions, go ahead and do so. But if not, I know this episode was short, but thank you for joining us again for another How To with Ziad. We'll be back next week. We usually do these on Thursdays. This was a weird week, so it was on Friday, but next week we'll be here on Thursday at 1 p.m. And the topic is TBD, but if you have any suggestions or topics that you would like to hear about, please DM us, reach out to us, let us know what you want to hear. We want to give you content that is useful for you.
Yeah, please. I was going to say the same thing. You know, this series is meant for you guys. It's meant for to help, you know, answer any questions that you have. And so please reach out to topics that you want us to talk about, and we'll tackle it. You know, we'll get into the details, dive in, and help you understand a little bit more.
Absolutely. And if you have any questions in the meantime, reach out to us, reach out to Ziad. Ziad, I don't know if you want to give your contact information.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to my email. It is ziad@gerberkawasaki.com. You can find me on Instagram as well, Ziad Hijazi, or LinkedIn, or you can call into our office line. It's 310-441-9393. Happy to help out.
Amazing. Well, thank you for doing another episode with me, Ziad.
Yeah,
I'm excited for next week. How To with
Yep.
Ziad.
Yep, excited. Have a great weekend.
You too.